If you're ready for a story of betrayal, vengeance, and the moment humanity decided never again to bow, then stay with me. Before we begin, make sure to hit that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments about how you think humanity would answer such treachery, and don't forget to subscribe for more tales of courage and defiance. Now let's step into the chambers where it all began. The Galactic Council Chamber was a cathedral of alien architecture, carved from obsidian-like stone that shimmered with starlight harvested from a dying sun. Rows of towering figures filled the tiers, scaled, chitinous, feathered, all united in one shared conviction: humanity was too young to sit among them. Captain Marcus Hale stood at the center dais, his posture unyielding despite the weight of 10,000 eyes pressing down on him. His peacekeepers, clad in ceremonial white with the insignia of Earth embroidered across their chests, stood like marble statues behind him. They had not come to fight. They had come to mediate, to prove Earth's commitment to peace. Marcus's voice carried steady across the chamber. This war between your empires has cost millions of lives. Earth offers its peacekeepers as neutral mediators, to guard against further bloodshed. We are not here to conquer. We are here to preserve. His words were translated into 100 tongues, echoes rippling across the chamber. For a heartbeat, silence reigned. Then came laughter. It started as a low hiss from General Threx of the Karate, his mandibles clattering as his 6 eyes gleamed with contempt. Others joined, the guttural bark of the Dreln, the shrill trill of the Arathii. The laughter grew until it drowned out Marcus's voice entirely. "You mistake yourselves," Threx said, rising to his full armored height, easily twice the size of Marcus. "Children of a backwater world, daring to call yourselves arbiters of galactic law." His claws raked the air as if tearing through Earth itself. "You stand here clothed in white, claiming purity, when you are nothing but a species fattened by luck and shielded by distance. Today we correct that illusion." Marcus's jaw clenched. He had expected resistance, mockery even. But something darker threaded Threx's words, something lethal. He gave the silent hand signal to his men: "Stay alert." The chamber doors slammed shut with the sound of thunder. Alien soldiers, armor gleaming, weapons leveled, marched inward, surrounding the human delegation. The peacekeepers did not flinch, though their hands twitched toward weapons they were forbidden to carry in this hall. Marcus stepped forward. "This is a place of diplomacy. If you turn it into a killing ground, you dishonor every life sworn to this council." Threx's mandibles spread in what might have been a smile. "Honor is a human word. In our tongue there is only dominance." Then the first shot was fired. It carved through the chest of Lieutenant Ramirez, who fell with his white uniform blooming red. Chaos erupted. The chamber filled with the screams of species witnessing history, the slaughter of Earth's envoys. Peacekeepers drew ceremonial blades, the only weapons allowed them. They fought with grim ferocity, steel flashing against plasma. Men and women who had sworn to protect peace fell one by one, cut down not on the battlefield but in the hall of supposed unity. Marcus fought to reach his men, parrying a blow with the hilt of his blade, driving his shoulder into an alien soldier to knock him aside. "Hold the line," he roared, though there was no line left to hold. The dais became a killing pit. One by one his peacekeepers were executed. Their deaths were not quick. The alien generals had intended this as a message. Marcus's throat burned as he saw Corporal Singh, eyes blazing with defiance to his last breath, dragged before Threx and executed with a single brutal strike. Blood stained the council's polished floor, a crimson pool spreading beneath banners that had once symbolized cooperation. And still the council watched. Not one alien delegate intervened. Some turned their faces away. Others leaned forward, eager witnesses to Earth's humiliation. At last Marcus was seized, weapons stripped from him, arms pinned. He struggled against the grip of soldiers whose strength dwarfed his own. Threx loomed over him, claws brushing Marcus's face as if savoring the moment. "You came here clothed in the arrogance of peace," Threx said. "Now you will return to your world empty-handed, with the knowledge that the galaxy does not fear Earth. It erases Earth." A blade rose. Marcus braced himself, ready to die with the same dignity as his men. But fate twisted. A council decree, some last-minute bargain Marcus could not hear, spared him. Instead of death, he was cast down before the assembly, bloodied but alive. The alien generals laughed as he was dragged from the hall. "Run back to your world, human," Threx hissed. "Tell them their peacekeepers are dust. Tell them their dream of unity died here." Outside, the stars blurred as Marcus was thrown into a transport shuttle. His hands trembled, not from fear but from rage. The faces of his fallen burned behind his eyes, their loyalty, their courage wasted in betrayal. When the shuttle docked with Earth's fleet, silence greeted him. Soldiers saluted, not out of pride but mourning. Word spread faster than light. Across Earth's colonies, the footage of the massacre, recorded and broadcast by the very aliens who had orchestrated it, played endlessly. Families wept. Leaders raged. Entire cities lit with candles in honor of the fallen. Marcus stood before the Earth Council, uniform torn, blood drying on his skin. He told them everything, the laughter, the executions, the council's silence. His voice did not break, but every syllable was edged with fire. They called us children, he said. They believe peace is weakness. They believe Earth will bow. I swear to you, by the blood of every man and woman they slaughtered, Earth will answer. We will not be erased. The chamber trembled with fury, but beneath the rage, a shadow stirred. For in the vaults beneath the desert sands, older than any empire, older than history itself, Earth had been keeping a secret. Whispers moved through the council chambers, quiet but insistent. There was still one path left, an ancient one. Marcus felt the weight of every eye upon him, the question unspoken but burning in the air. Would Earth dare? The night outside was restless with storms, lightning clawing across the sky. And deep below, sealed in stone, something ancient listened, waiting to be awakened. The desert night stretched endless, stars burning cold over the Egyptian sands, when Dr. Karim El-Masri descended into the excavation site that had consumed his life. Generations of his ancestors had spoken of tombs, dynasties, and gods, but what lay beneath the shifting dunes was older than Egypt itself, older even than the myths carved in stone. It was no coincidence Earth had chosen him, soldier by blood, archaeologist by profession, a man who lived with one foot in history and the other in steel. Karim's boots struck ancient steps as he walked deeper into the chamber. His team trailed him, soldiers in tactical gear carrying lamps that painted golden arcs across the walls. Glyphs stared back at them, carved with a precision alien to chisels. They did not tell stories of kings or harvests, but of war. Figures towered, broad-shouldered and unyielding, locked in battle against serpentine beings falling from the sky. Flames licked at the edges of the carvings and stars circled above them. Karim paused, tracing the outline of a warrior holding a curved blade, the khopesh glimmering with the strange inlay of minerals no quarry on Earth had ever produced. They thought these were myths, he murmured, more to himself than to the soldiers. But myths are memories. Memories sharpened into warning. At the base of the chamber stood the object that had drawn him here. A sarcophagus of black stone, massive enough that 20 men could not encircle it with outstretched arms. Its surface shimmered faintly, not with dust, but with a faint humming energy that whispered at the edges of hearing. Symbols spiraled across it, binding scripts interwoven with sigils that no living tongue could decipher fully. But Karim had studied enough to recognize the intent. A prison. A voice cut through the silence. This is what you've been hiding from us? Karim turned to see Captain Marcus Hale stride into the chamber. His presence carried the weight of a man who had survived the galaxy's disdain and carried the ghosts of his men on his shoulders. His uniform was crisp, but the bandages at his wrist betrayed wounds not yet healed. His eyes, however, were what struck Karim most. They no longer belonged to a peacekeeper. They belonged to a soldier who had seen betrayal and would never forgive it. This is no secret, Karim replied evenly. This is our inheritance. The question is whether we dare claim it. Marcus approached the sarcophagus, his hand brushing the carved surface. The hum deepened as if recognizing him. He stepped back sharply, unsettled. You make it sound like we're opening a treasure chest. That's not what this is. You've studied the warnings, you know what's inside was never meant to walk free again. Karim's jaw tightened. You lost your men because you believed in diplomacy. I respect that. But the galaxy showed its truth, Marcus. They understand only power. And power is what lies within this stone. Or a curse. Perhaps both. Karim's gaze didn't waver. But curses are just power with a price. The chamber filled with silence, broken only by the electric thrum of the sarcophagus. The soldiers shifted uneasily, their fingers grazing weapons, though against what they were not sure. Marcus finally said, "What do you call him?" Karim exhaled as if releasing a truth that had weighed on him for years. General Cetek. The scourge of serpents. A soldier who lived before your histories began. When the stars first spat monsters upon this world, he was the blade that drove them back. Our ancestors entombed him here not because he was defeated but because they feared him. He was too great a weapon to leave walking free. The air thickened with that revelation. Marcus felt the weight of it, The enormity of reaching into the past to answer the future. You're telling me we had gods and we buried them. Kareem's lips curved into something between reverence and dread. We had soldiers who wore the mask of gods. And now we need one again. The team set to work with precision. Generators hummed, their lights casting long shadows across the glyphs. The sarcophagus responded as if recognizing the rhythm of human machines, its surface flickering with strange energy. Kareem oversaw the process, reading the patterns, chanting ancient words even as computer screens translated their resonance into waveforms. Marcus stood apart, arms folded, watching with the skepticism of a man who trusted steel and discipline, not spells and shadows. Yet even he felt it when the air shifted, charged, pressing down as though the chamber had become the lung of some vast beast drawing its first breath in millennia. The stone cracked. Not a crumble of age but a deliberate parting. Energy hissed like sand whipped by a storm. The soldiers raised their weapons instinctively but Kareem snapped, "Hold!" From the sarcophagus rose a figure. He was massive, taller than any man, broad as a doorframe. His skin gleamed with the luster of bronze, muscles cut from centuries of war. Scars scored his body like maps of every battle he had ever fought. Armor clung to him, ancient yet glimmering with alloys no forger of today could replicate, patched with fragments of gold and obsidian that pulsed with buried light. In his fist, still clenched as though he had never laid it down, was a khopesh whose edge shimmered as if alive. His eyes opened and the chamber flared with golden fire. The soldier staggered back. Marcus's hand dropped to his sidearm out of instinct. Kareem stepped forward, hands raised in respect. The warrior's voice thundered, echoing against the walls. "Who breaks my silence?" His tongue was old, but the glyphs on the sarcophagus shimmered, bridging the gap until the words rang clear to modern ears. "Who dares call Seatek from his sleep?" Kareem bowed his head. "We are your sons, your heirs. Earth bleeds once more under the boots of invaders. We ask you to rise again to fight as you once did." Seatek's gaze swept the chamber, taking in uniforms, weapons, the strange glow of technology. His lip curled. "This is no army. These are children dressed for war." His eyes locked on Marcus, pinning him like prey. "And you? You wear command upon your shoulders. Where was your strength when your men were slain?" Marcus stepped forward, his spine rigid. "Dead because I trusted the galaxy's promise of honor. I will not make that mistake again." For a moment, the golden fire dimmed, as though Seatek weighed the truth of that answer. He studied Marcus the way predators studied one another, searching for weakness. At last he gave a single nod. "You carry shame like armor. That I can respect." His gaze shifted back to Kareem. "But know this, if you wake me you do not command me. I'm not your weapon. I am Earth's vengeance." The sarcophagus groaned as its remaining restraints split and fell away. Energy arced across Seatek's body, fusing into the plates of his armor, humming along the edge of his blade. His very presence seemed to warp the air, bending it around him like a storm-given flesh. Kareem's voice trembled with awe. "Then vengeance you shall be." Seatek stepped from the tomb, each footfall shaking the ground. He raised his face to the ceiling as if sensing the stars beyond, and his golden eyes burned hotter. "Where are they?" he demanded. "The serpents who think to devour Earth again? Bring me their generals, and I will show them what it means to wake a warrior they could not kill." The chamber vibrated with his roar, a sound that rattled stone and steel alike. Soldiers stared, torn between terror and reverence. Marcus, despite himself, felt a fire ignite within. This was no myth, no relic. This was the blade Earth had hidden, sharpened in silence for the day it would be needed. That day had come. The desert sun had barely risen when the training ground roared with the clash of weapons. Soldiers ringed the arena, their faces tense, their eyes fixed on the colossal figure striding across the sand. General Seatek had not slept since his awakening. He did not rest, he did not waver. He demanded combat, and the Earth Council, though reluctant, had given him what he craved, an army to test. The first squad came at him with precision. Plasma rifles hummed, targeting locks snapped into place, stun rounds fired in disciplined bursts. Seatek did not so much as flinch. His khopesh blazed with golden fire, each swing cutting beams from the air and sending sparks across the arena. His movements were brutal, efficient, but disturbingly elegant, as though he were not a man but the memory of war made flesh. Soldiers fell one by one, struck by the blunt side of his blade or hurled into the sand with bone-shattering force. Captain Marcus Hale watched from the command tower, his jaw set. Every instinct told him to intervene, but he knew this was necessary. The men had to see what kind of weapon Earth had unearthed. They had to understand that C-Tech was not theirs to control, he was a storm they could only choose to ride. When the last soldier hit the sand, groaning in defeat, C-Tech planted his blade in the ground and roared, "These are the warriors of Earth. These are the defenders of your world." His voice thundered across the arena, echoing against steel and stone. They fall like wheat before the scythe. Marcus descended the tower, boots crunching on the sand. The men pulled themselves upright, forming ranks again despite bruises and burns. Marcus stepped into the ring, placing himself between C-Tech and the soldiers. "They are not gods," he said evenly. "They are men. They bleed and still they rise. That is Earth's strength." C-Tech turned, golden eyes burning. "Strength? You call this strength? I see softness, hesitation, men afraid to kill." "That hesitation is discipline," Marcus countered. "If you want butchers, you'll find none here." For a long moment the two men locked eyes, warrior to warrior, philosophies colliding like blades. Then C-Tech wrenched his weapon free of the sand. "Show me then. Show me the discipline of your age." The soldiers gasped as Marcus drew a training blade from the rack, steel gleaming in the sun. He rolled his shoulders, adjusting his grip. This was no ceremonial duel. This was survival. C-Tech lunged first, a blur of bronze and gold. Marcus barely brought his blade up in time, sparks flying as steel met alien alloy. The force of the impact rattled his bones. He pivoted, deflecting a downward strike, and drove his shoulder into C-Tech's chest. It was like hitting stone. The ancient warrior barely moved, but his eyes flared with interest. "You do not cower," C-Tech said, swinging again. "I don't have the luxury," Marcus growled, twisting away and striking at C-Tech's exposed flank. The blow landed, the blade skittering across armor without piercing. C-Tech grinned, teeth white against his bronze skin. The duel stretched on, sand exploding beneath their boots, blades sparking in the dawn light. Marcus fought with precision, conserving movement, striking only when he saw the chance. C-Tech fought with overwhelming force, testing, probing, driving him back. The soldiers around the ring shouted encouragement, torn between fear and awe. At last C-Tech struck Marcus's blade from his hand, sending it spinning into the sand. He raised his khopesh for the final blow, but froze. Marcus stood unflinching, chest heaving, staring up at him without fear. Slowly C-Tech lowered the blade. "You have iron in you, child of Earth. Perhaps there is hope yet." The soldiers erupted in cheers, relief spilling into admiration. For the first time since his awakening, C-Tech inclined his head in respect. Not to the army, not to the council, but to Marcus. In the days that followed, the training intensified. C-Tech demanded endurance beyond the breaking point, forcing men and women to run until their lungs burned, to fight until their muscles screamed. He tore down their tactics, then rebuilt them with ruthless efficiency. He introduced drills that belonged more to ancient battlefields than modern war, yet somehow they worked. The soldiers began to move differently, less like individuals, more like a single organism sharpened by fire. Yet even as discipline grew, so did unease. C-Tech scoffed at rules of engagement, at the very concept of restraint. "You chain your warriors with laws," he told Marcus one evening as they watched the troops spar. "When the enemy comes to kill, do you ask him to abide by treaties? Do you ask him to spare your children?" Marcus folded his arms. "Restraint isn't weakness. It's civilization. Without it, we become the monsters we fight." C-Tech's eyes glowed faintly, golden embers in the dark. "You think you are not already monsters? I have seen the truth. The galaxy fears not your peace, but what you will become when you tire of it." Their arguments became routine, sparks of philosophy clashing as fiercely as their blades. Yet beneath the friction, respect grew. Marcus saw in C-Tech not just brutality but a soldier's unbreakable core. C-Tech saw in Marcus not softness but a leader who carried the burden of his people like a shield. The fragile balance broke when the council delivered its orders. A fleet of the alien coalition had gathered at the edge of human space, preparing what they called a punitive strike. Earth's ships were outnumbered 3-1. Diplomacy had failed. Conventional strategy would collapse. The council chamber fell silent as Marcus read the orders aloud. General C-Tech will lead a strike force to neutralize the alien generals commanding the fleet. The objective is not defense. It is demonstration. C-Tech's lips curved into a grim smile. At last. Blood for blood. Marcus lowered the datapad. His gut twisted. He knew the truth of this mission. It was suicide. Strike into the heart of an alien fortress, face generals who commanded legions, and somehow survive long enough to deliver a message. But refusal was not an option. Humanity had been mocked, humiliated, its peacekeepers executed in the name of dominance. If they did nothing, Earth would be broken before it had truly risen. After the meeting, Marcus found himself staring at the stars from the base balcony. Kareem joined him, his eyes shadowed with the weight of history. "You've seen what C-Tech can do," Kareem said quietly. "The galaxy thinks us weak. He is proof we are not. But he is not a man of compromise. When you unleash him, you may not be able to call him back." Marcus rubbed the scar at his wrist, a reminder of the council massacre. "Then I'll be the leash if that's what it takes. Better a leash on a storm than silence in a grave." Behind them, C-Tech stood in the shadows, listening, his expression unreadable. His golden eyes burned brighter as he turned toward the horizon where alien fleets waited. "The serpents mock you," he murmured to himself. "They believe Earth a nest of children. Soon they will learn children grow teeth." The night swallowed his words, but the air seemed to tremble, as though the universe itself braced for what was coming. The alien war fortress hung in orbit like a blade aimed at Earth, its surface bristling with weapon emplacements that glowed faintly in the darkness. Hundreds of ships surrounded it, a swarm of steel and scale ready to descend at a single command. From the bridge of the human strike vessel Horizon Spear, Captain Marcus Hale studied the tactical feed. Every instinct told him the mission bordered on madness. But madness was all Earth had left. C-Tech stood beside him, a towering figure cloaked in ancient armor that shimmered faintly under the ship's light. His khopesh rested against his shoulder, but his presence carried more weight than any weapon. The crew gave him a wide berth, their eyes flicking toward him with a mixture of awe and fear. He did not acknowledge them. His gaze was locked on the war fortress beyond the glass, his expression as cold and immovable as stone. "This is no army," C-Tech said, his voice rumbling low. "It is a nest of serpents fattened on arrogance. We will strike off the head and the body will writhe in death." Marcus answered without looking away from the feed. "The objective is precision. We're not here to slaughter the rank and file. We're here to send a message. Earth will not kneel." C-Tech's lips curved into something between a sneer and a smile. "Messages are written in blood. The galaxy will read ours clearly enough." The crew looked to Marcus, waiting for the order. He gave it. "Execute infiltration." The Horizon Spear cut into the dark, flanked by two smaller frigates. Cloaking fields shimmered faintly, masking their approach as they slipped through the outer patrol lines. The fortress loomed larger with every heartbeat, its surface alive with the crawl of ships docking and departing, soldiers marching in endless waves. Marcus's hands gripped the console tighter. Somewhere inside that labyrinth were the alien generals who had ordered the slaughter of his men. The strike team gathered in the hangar. Marines checked weapons, blades strapped beside rifles as C-Tech had demanded. "If your fire fails, your hands will not," he had told them. Now they moved like men and women preparing for judgment. Kareem adjusted the energy seals on C-Tech's armor, murmuring the activation rites he alone understood. Golden light surged across the plates, humming with ancient power. C-Tech did not flinch as the energy bound itself to him. He only flexed his fingers around the hilt of his khopesh, the weapon answering with a low growl of power. The drop craft detached. Silence pressed in as it streaked toward the fortress, guided by stealth fields that shimmered like a mirage. Alarms blared too late. By the time alien sentries registered the anomaly, the craft had already breached a hangar bay. The ramp dropped and Earth's warriors stormed into the firestorm. The first line of alien guards fell almost instantly. Plasma bolts seared through the air, grenades detonated in dazzling flashes, but at the center of it all strode C-Tech. He moved with terrifying speed, his blade carving arcs of golden fire that severed armor and bone alike. Where the khopesh fell, no soldier rose again. The aliens recoiled, their formation breaking, panic rippling through their lines. Marcus advanced with the Marines, laying down precision fire, covering gaps C-Tech ignored. He saw the terror bloom in alien eyes as they recognized that this was not a man. This was something older, something they had whispered about in myths but never believed real. The strike team pressed forward, carving a path through the fortress. Hallways shook with explosions, steel groaning under the strain of the assault. Alarms shrieked in alien tongues. Commands blared across comms, calling reinforcements to crush the intruders. But every squad that stood in their way shattered. The Marines fought with precision, but it was C-Tech who turned the tide. He absorbed fire as though the universe itself armored him, his blade carving through squads as if they were reeds before the scythe. They reached the central chamber, a throne-like hall where the alien generals awaited. Banners of conquest hung from the vaulted ceiling, their symbols etched with centuries of domination. The generals stood in their ceremonial armor, claws and mandibles glinting in the harsh light. Threx, the karate who had led the council massacre, stepped forward with a sneer. "So the children return," he hissed. "And they bring a relic to fight their battles. How fitting that Earth hides behind ghosts." Cetek stepped forward, his presence filling the chamber. He lifted his blade, the glow casting fire across the walls. "I am no ghost," he thundered. "I am the storm that broke you once before. And now I return to finish what your ancestors could not." The generals raised their weapons. The chamber erupted in chaos. Blades clashed with claws, plasma bolts streaked across the air, explosions rattled the ground. Cetek hurled himself into the heart of the fight, his khopesh a blur of golden fire. He tore through armor, cut down guards who rushed to shield their commanders. Marcus led his marines in tight formation, striking where Cetek's fury left openings. Together, ancient wrath and modern discipline moved like a single force, overwhelming the defenders. Threx lunged at Cetek, mandibles clattering, plasma halberd swinging in a lethal arc. Cetek caught the weapon on his blade, sparks cascading. Their eyes locked, predator to predator. "You mocked Earth," Cetek growled, driving his knee into Threx's chest. "You called them children. Look now upon their father." With a roar, he drove the khopesh through Threx's chest. Golden fire erupted, consuming the general's body in a blaze that seared itself into every watching eye. The remaining generals faltered, their courage cracking. One tried to flee. Cetek hurled his blade, the curved weapon spinning in a trail of light before cleaving the alien in two. Silence followed, broken only by the labored breaths of the Marines. The chamber floor was littered with the broken bodies of the coalition's leaders. Cetek stood amidst them, his blade dripping golden fire. Slowly, deliberately, he lifted the severed head of Threx and turned to Marcus. "This is your message," he said. Marcus nodded grimly. "Then let's deliver it." When the strike team stormed back into the council chambers days later, they were not peacekeepers in white. They were soldiers clad in steel, and at their front strode Cetek, his armor gleaming with ancient light, his khopesh still burning. He walked to the center dais, the same place Marcus's men had once stood before their execution, and cast the heads of the alien generals onto the floor. The chamber erupted in gasps, shouts, the clamor of panic. Cetek's voice cut through it all like thunder. "Earth came to you with peace and you answered with murder. Now you see the price of your arrogance. This is not the end. This is the warning. The next time you lift your hand against Earth, it will not be your generals who fall, it will be your worlds." The council fell silent, cowed not by words but by the sight of the unstoppable fury standing before them. Marcus stepped forward, his voice steady. "Earth will not be erased. Remember this day." The silence stretched, thick with fear. The galaxy had witnessed Earth's vengeance and nothing would ever be the same. Cetek turned, his eyes glowing as he whispered for Marcus alone to hear. "They think this victory ends it. They're wrong. The serpents always return." The chamber shuddered with the weight of his words, and the future of Earth hung heavy in the silence that followed. The battlefield smelled of blood and smoke, the stars overhead obscured by the flashing beams of alien artillery. Sandstorm winds carried the echoes of thousands of voices, Earth's forces, battered but unbroken, clashing with the alien armadas that had sought to reduce humanity to obedient slaves. At the heart of the storm stood Kadim, the resurrected warrior of Egypt's ancient bloodline, his body encased in gleaming, gold-etched armor that seemed to pulse with the weight of history itself. The Anubis helm concealed his face, but his eyes, burning like coals within, watched with unrelenting focus as the alien generals unleashed their final surge. The battlefield was no longer just a place of war. It was a crucible, the last trial in which the soul of humanity itself was being tested. Men and women fought beside him, soldiers, engineers, farmers who had taken up arms when Earth had been left vulnerable, but their faith was fixed on him, the warrior who embodied their rage, their grief, and their unyielding will to live free. As he raised his khopesh blade, its edge singing with power channeled from the ancient rites that had birthed him, the very air seemed to shiver. Even the alien generals, creatures who had butchered peacekeepers without hesitation, hesitated now. The lead general, towering in obsidian armor laced with veins of light, lifted his staff and spat words in a guttural language that reeked of command. Legions of bioforged soldiers surged forward, their monstrous frames moving like tidal waves of claws and blades. But Kadim did not retreat. He roared, the sound thunderous and human, carrying the voices of every ancestor who had bled in the sands of earth before him. His khopesh cleaved through the first line, cutting down creatures as though their armored hides were parchment. Each strike became a declaration, each motion a vow that humanity would never bow again. Beside him, Colonel Rourke fought with unyielding ferocity, his battered armor painted with the dust of war. Though his frame lacked the divine strength of Kadim, his mind was sharp, his strategies ruthless, his will unbreakable. He commanded Earth's forces with precision, weaving their lines like threads in a tapestry of survival. "Hold the left flank," he barked, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Keep the artillery moving forward." And still, when he looked to Kadim, his own heart surged with pride, for he knew that together mortal discipline and mythic might could break even the most unassailable enemy. The alien generals advanced in unison, their staffs glowing with cosmic fire. The ground split as they unleashed storms of plasma and shadow, the kind of destructive force that had reduced entire colonies to ash. Yet Kadim met it head-on, the glyphs across his armor igniting in patterns older than the stars. He raised his shield, not forged by human hands but by ritual, its surface glowing with symbols of Horus and Ra. The alien storm shattered against it, fragments of light exploding harmlessly into sparks. His defiance turned the tide. Earth's soldiers saw the impossible with their own eyes and redoubled their efforts, striking harder, refusing to yield. One general broke from the formation, rushing toward Kadim with a blade of liquid darkness, each swing leaving trails of dissolving reality in its wake. Their clash was like thunder splitting the desert sky. Blade against blade, shield against void, every strike shook the ground beneath them. The alien sneered, its many eyes glowing with contempt. "You are nothing but dust, a relic dragged from a tomb. You cannot stand against eternity." Kadim answered not with words but with action. He stepped forward, unrelenting, each blow from his khopesh carving pieces from the alien's arrogance. "Dust," he growled, his voice like a storm, "is what you will become." With one final strike he severed the general's arm, then drove his blade deep into its chest. Light bled from the wound, and the alien let out a shriek that echoed across the battlefield before collapsing into ruin. The ground trembled as its body fell, and silence hung for a heartbeat before Earth's soldiers roared in triumph. But the victory was far from complete. The remaining generals unleashed their fury, uniting their powers into a cataclysm that tore open the sky itself. Lightning of black and crimson danced across the battlefield, crushing buildings, scattering soldiers. The earth split open, rivers of molten fire rushing forth. Kadim staggered beneath the weight of their combined assault. His armor cracked, blood spilling down his side, yet still he stood tall. Colonel Rourke rushed to his side, his own face scarred and eyes wild with determination. "You can't do this alone. You'll burn yourself out." Kadim turned to him, eyes fierce beneath the helm. "I was never meant to stand alone. Humanity stands with me." With those words Rourke rallied the soldiers. Every man, every woman, poured their strength into the fight. They pushed forward through fire and shadow, not because they thought they could survive, but because they refused to let their world die cowering. And as their voices rose in defiance, something ancient stirred within Kadim, deeper even than the rituals that had awakened him. It was not magic, not divinity. It was the human spirit itself, carried across millennia, igniting in one soldier's heart. He surged forward, his body blazing with golden light, the khopesh burning brighter than any star. With a cry that shook the heavens, he leapt into the storm conjured by the generals and cut through it, cleaving apart their combined power. The backlash consumed them, their forms unraveling into nothingness, their shrieks swallowed by silence. When the dust settled, Kadim stood amidst the ruin, his armor scorched, his breathing ragged. The battlefield was littered with the remains of the alien horde, their generals obliterated. Earth's forces gathered around him, silent at first, then erupting into a roar that seemed to shake the very stars. Rourke placed a hand on his shoulder, pride and exhaustion mingling in his gaze. "It's over," he said softly. "We've won." But Kadim knew better. He removed his helm, revealing a face weathered not by age but by struggle, a face that bore the weight of countless generations. His eyes turned toward the sky, where alien fleets still glittered in the distance. "No," he whispered. "It has only begun. Today we proved we will not kneel. Tomorrow the galaxy will remember it." And as the soldiers stood with him beneath the fractured heavens, humanity was reborn, not as victims, not as prey, but as warriors whose spirit could never be extinguished. The Egyptians had carved this truth in stone thousands of years ago, and now it echoed among the stars. The dead had been avenged. The future had been claimed. And the universe would never forget the day Earth unleashed its ancient warrior soldier.